Muchachos y muchachas. So I've been noticing something amongst all the other fishy headlines, something of trend that I don't believe a lot of people are going to catch. And the only reason why I caught this is because I am in these headlines day by day. As you guys know, I run the Daily Traffic, a platform that reports human trafficking headlines daily. And you can follow that on Instagram as well as on my podcast, which is nightly, Monday through Friday at 9:30 p.m. Central. That is linked in the description below. I encourage you to follow it because we do cover quite a bit. Now, so with saying that, I see the trend in headlines every day. Sometimes there's a trend in Epstein headlines. Sometimes there's a trend in, a major sting. And this time around, because the Super Bowl is on Sunday, I see that there is this perpetuated narrative that there is some sort of human trafficking, sex trafficking myth that surrounds the Super Bowl. And I'm sitting here wondering, since when did this become a myth that there is an influx of human trafficking around the Super Bowl? And I needed to dig into this because I needed to understand, because ever since I have known and volunteered within combating trafficking and aftercare, this has always been a known thing that Super Bowl does influx a lot of visitors, a lot of attendees, in which creates a party atmosphere, and then thus there is human trafficking. So I just need to understand, where did this come from? Where is it coming from? And what is the narrative with this? And then we're also going to possibly debunk this as well. Debunk their debunk. Stay right there. We're going to go through it. The fear of wrinkles sometimes stunt my self-confidence. Now, I've tried many anti-aging serums, natural health supplements, and everything in between. But that is when my friend told me about an amazing new face serum, and my life has never been the same. My results with it have been nothing short of miraculous. Within no time, it helped reduce my appearance of fine lines, return my skin's elasticity, and give my skin a more youthful glow. My skin is much more vibrant now and is tighter, firmer, and smoother than I'd ever seen it in years. If you've been struggling with visible signs of aging and can't seem to get the help you need, then I highly recommend it. I highly recommend Glow with Natalie. Get it today for up to 38% off for a limited time by going to glowwithnatalie.com or by clicking the link below. All right, so let's level set really quick, okay? Ever since about a decade ago, back in 2012, when I first learned about human trafficking, and henceforth I volunteered in many different respects, whether it was outreach ministry on the streets, aftercare, safe house volunteering, mentorship with various organizations, might I add, it's always been known within the anti-trafficking ministry industry that Super Bowl is indeed an attraction for human trafficking, and a lot more activity does influx around that time. And the reason for this is because, the Super Bowl attracts tens of thousands of people. I think this year it's estimated 70,000 are going to visit Los Angeles for this year's Super Bowl. So take that as an example. There are many people plus that visit the hosting city just for the fact that it's going to be a party atmosphere. And within the mentality of a John, if you guys don't know what a John is, it is a individual who purchases sex. In the mentality of a John, that is their form of entertainment. And so that's why it is a regular business. That's why it's a regularity for them to transaction this and purchase this for themselves. So if this is their form of entertainment and they're within an entertaining atmosphere, party atmosphere, it's just known that this is what Johns will acclimate themselves to, and they will gravitate themselves towards purchasing sex. Now, to my surprise, I saw that these headlines were trending amongst the sex trafficking, human trafficking headlines as I purvey every single day. And this is an example of what I'm seeing. For instance, you'll probably see it every other headline here. Increased sex trafficking during the Super Bowl is and I believe this says myth. Let's just open this up. Is a dangerous myth, as I suspected it was going to say. The next headline reading, Super Bowl sex trafficking myth is harmful, expert says. So now we have experts. And as you guys know, they always say, trust the science, trust the experts. So that's a very dangerous notion, as we are also gathering in the past couple of years. Continued on, as Super Bowl approaches, advocates warn against, and I'm just going to assume that they're going to say misinformation around sex trafficking. The next one from Los Angeles Times, the dangerously fake link between the Super Bowl and human trafficking. And then continued on, no, there's no evidence. The Super Bowl is the biggest sex trafficking event in the world. So you guys catch my drift, right? Like, you just see a pattern of these headlines now perpetuating this narrative that no, sex trafficking is not, it's not a big deal during the Super Bowl, which I am going to actually get into the sauce on that as well. Now let's just dig into one of these headlines, because this is from an expert, they say. Okay, and this is from news.nd.edu. Super Bowl sex trafficking myth is harmful, expert says. So who is this expert, you might ask? The claim that Super Bowl leads to a surge in sex trafficking cases has been widely discredited, according to 𝘱𝘐𝘮𝘢, an assistant professor at Notre Dame, University of Notre Dame. But 𝘱𝘢 isn't surprised that it continues to be repeated and continues to cause harm. So this to me seems that this is a bit of a perpetuated misinformation campaign that they're trying to now deploy out into our news sphere. That's what it seems like to me. The myth of sex trafficking, this is what 𝘱𝘢 says, at the Super Bowl persists for one reason: it's useful. And then continues on. It gives companies the opportunity to virtue signal, to show their commitment to a cause we can all agree on. But the practices that follow are designed to promote a company's image, not address the problem. Now, I'm just going to stop right there, okay? Now, what is a form of virtue signaling, as in a, let's just say in a group of corporations that want to virtue signal in a trendy space? Let's take Pride, for instance. In June, we all know this. We all see this. In June, it's as if every single company, every single corporation, they all hang the Pride flag, and, you know, they virtue signal. They even sell their merchandise. And it's visible that this is a grand virtue signaling campaign within June, right? I think we can all agree on that. Now, I have never, besides it being with ministries and nonprofits who actually are on the front lines doing this type of work, I have never seen corporations in a group setting virtue signal on the basis of combating human trafficking. Now, even that is concerning, right? But let's just look at the reality. It doesn't happen. We don't see a big conjugation of companies that are like, oh, fight human trafficking, be aware, and all these things, right? You might see a sprinkle of them. Maybe Uber. I know Uber has their criticisms as well because of their virtue signaling in different respects. But at least we can say, let's be honest and let's be fair, that they do actually put out awareness campaigns within Super Bowl or sporting events. And, you know, that is a known thing. I have seen that reported. But I can't think of, and this is me looking at the trafficking news every single day, I can't think of any other company at the top of my head that actually do this. So I don't know what she's looking at that virtue signals in a group setting like that in the facade of corporations. I've never seen it. So I don't know what she's talking about, to be honest with you. The consequences of raising awareness can be disastrous. Really? It can be disastrous, you say. Exposing innocent people to scrutiny, in some cases shaming. It's likewise useful to the police, who point out the alleged emergency to justify greater surveillance and extraordinary measures. They're also given the added incentive to arrest sex workers, and they spin their arrests as sex trafficking related. But if you look closely, reports of sex trafficking related arrests often involve consensual encounters or even victimless stings. Now, I'm going to just stop you right there really quick, okay? Whoa. All right. So let's just understand this really quick, okay? And this is going to also level set for everything else that we're going to see that I'm going to give you guys sauce on. First of all, within the ugly world of human trafficking and sexual exploitation in human trafficking, we have to understand the psychology of it. This is just a basic psychology. These victims are under trauma bond. And when you're under trauma bond or compounded trauma bond, meaning that they're repetitively coerced, repetitively tricked, and gaslit, and, cycle goes on and on and on, then a victim goes into what's called survival mode. So they're just surviving. That's their first instinct, is to survive. As a human, that's what they do. And a lot of times we don't see what's going on in the background. We don't see the guerrilla pimps threatening their lives or the lives of their families or their livelihoods, taking absolutely everything away from them. We don't see that side. Okay, so that's never going to make repetitive headlines. This is what goes on in the underground. So let's just understand that there is a fear-based coercion that goes into all of this control, and it's a trauma bond. It's a psychological bond that these survivors go through, and that's why they stay in survival mode, and that's why they appear that they're consensual a lot of times, but it's because they have to. It's because a lot of times they don't know that they're being trafficked. Okay. And I've heard that from various survivors. I didn't know I was being trafficked. I thought that he loved me. We were doing this for our future. And then retrospectively looking, when I learned about sex trafficking, then I knew that that's when I knew I was being trafficked, but it had already occurred. So I think that's very unfair to just conflate every single sex worker out there who is consensual, that, all these victims are also consensual as well, just because they appear so. That's a hard break, level set. We got to understand that, okay? Because that is a very dangerous rhetoric to spread. That, it's just, they're all sex workers. And that's not always the case. Some of these people, they seem to be consensual, but it's because they have to, because their life depends on it. So just really hard break there. Had to help you guys understand that. So then she goes into more as, the Superbowl sex trafficking myth is just one example of sex trafficking being distorted by the public. According to 𝘱𝘬𝘮𝘮, the fight against sex trafficking has been turned into a form of entertainment. People cheer as bad guys are thrown in jail and good guys are rescued, but that's not how the change happens. What are you talking about? What? So we're not supposed to cheer when the bad guys are thrown in jail? So we're not supposed to cheer when the good guys come out? When the victims are what planet are you living on? That is just human nature, that we want to see that, if you are innately good and you want to see people justified and people thrown at justice and get the justice that they deserve, what are you? I can't even, right? So I already see a lot of discrepancies within this argument. And then she continues on saying that fighting trafficking is complicated. At its core, trafficking is a power imbalance gone terribly, terribly wrong. The process of ending it can't start until we address the circumstances that make it possible. Unstable home environments leave children without support networks. That is actually true. Overcriminalization, that's true as well, and puts vulnerable people at odds with the police and economic desperation, among others. So I can actually, if we're going to agree on anything, I can agree with the last few statements of that, because I do agree that it's unstable home environments, broken backgrounds, overcriminalization. I agree with that as well. Vulnerable people at odds with the police, economic desperation, agreed, among others. But her statement right here, at its core, trafficking is a power imbalance gone terribly, terribly wrong. Like I just explained, with the trauma bond, the compounded trauma, the survival mode that these survivors go through, you cannot compare that to a power imbalance. You just absolutely can't. Don't care how many degrees you have. If you've spoken to survivors over and over again, and this is the same consensus that you gather, this is not a power imbalance. That's just a very, very, very dangerous oversimplification of what trafficking is. So gotta disagree with this wholeheartedly. Some parts I agree with. Like I said, I'm fair when I'm fair. I'm fair when it's due. This part right here, I'll just highlight it in blue. I do agree with, what she argues that, broken backgrounds, what causes trafficking, all that. Now, this is where I want to sort of pick and conflict with this narrative now. So as I pointed out to you, these headlines seem to be repetitive, regurgitating the same narrative that sex trafficking at the Super Bowl is a myth now. So then why are we having a local news article report that Los Angeles law enforcement are launching campaigns to target human trafficking ahead of the Super Bowl? Now, why would they do that? Because if it was a myth, you would have to imagine, let's just think here. Logically and rationally, if this was a myth that sex trafficking around the Super Bowl doesn't happen, it's just a misconception of the law statistics and or law enforcement statistics, all that, then why would law enforcement actively be planning ahead of time to form these campaigns to combat trafficking around the Super Bowl? And I highlighted some parts here. Ahead of time, ahead of all the fun and festivities of the Super Bowl, law enforcement unveiled an anti-trafficking campaigns in Los Angeles, plural. And this is actually coming from Hawaii News Now. So it is Hawaii News, but they are reporting on what they know from law enforcement in Los Angeles. So continued on. They want the public to be on the lookout, and they, meaning Los Angeles law enforcement, they want to be on the lookout for anyone who appears to be a victim of exploitation as abused children, young women, and men that are often moved from state to state ahead of big events. Now, why would law enforcement say that? This is a myth, right? According to the rhetoric. But why would they know that? Maybe because it has happened before. City and state police, listen to this. City and state police and federal agents have already busted suspected traffickers from different parts of the country who are in town because of the big game. But I thought it was a myth. I thought this was all just virtue signaling. But Los Angeles themselves, the law enforcement in Los Angeles already identified suspected traffickers in the city ahead of Super Bowl. Authorities said sometimes victims are forced to walk the streets while other times are exploited through apps. It's very hard because social media is everywhere. The internet is everywhere, said Special Agent Randall Hill of Homeland Security Investigations. Federal agents and HSI have been running various operations associated with the Super Bowl, and they've been working with LAPD. They say it's extremely important to work with our federal partners because by ourselves and working as an island, it's not going to work, says LAPD Captain Lillian Carranza. We need not only the local, but state and federal partners. Without them, we wouldn't be successful. Now, why would they need all these partnerships if this was a myth? You understand? So already, this is kind of debunking that rhetoric. Operations have already started days ago with undercover units, actively on the ground and surveilling this. So continued on, wanted to show you guys this. This was published February 11th, 2021, where this was Operation Game Over, where there was 75 arrested in a Super Bowl human trafficking sting. So again, my question, as I will sound like a broken record, if human trafficking, sex trafficking surrounding the time of the Super Bowl or the event itself is a myth, then how in the heck did they arrest 75 Johns within a human trafficking sting? Okay. This was in Tampa, Florida, 2021. Sheriff Chad Chronister in 2021 said that 75 individuals were arrested during Operation Game Over, describing it as a record number of arrests. Among them, 3 men are facing human trafficking charges. Others are trying to exchange money for sex, he explained. So it continues on. The sickening practice of human trafficking is a crime that is nothing less than modern day slavery. The sheriff said for the past 2 weeks, undercover detectives targeted hotels, motels, massage parlors, street solicitors, and online chat rooms. The youngest suspect was 19 years old, and the oldest was 73 years old. Okay, so that's one human trafficking sting that happened last year. Let's actually jump back a little bit more. This is back in 2019. An undercover Superbowl sex trafficking sting in Atlanta captures 169 offenders. Continued on. Over 150 people were arrested back in 2019, mind you, part of an FBI operation into sex trafficking in the lead up to Super Bowl. The Bureau said 169 were arrested over the course of an 11-day operation which began on January 23rd. And the figure included 34 individuals accused of trying to engage in sex acts with minors. So already this pays dividends. This paid dividends back in 2019 if there was a human trafficking sting and 34 of these individuals were seeking sex with a child. Is this really still a myth? We're only going back a couple to 3 years in these stings. Is this really a myth now? 26 alleged cases of trafficking, 9 reported adult victims, and further 9 alleged juvenile sex trafficking victims. So further 9 juvenile sex trafficking victims, I'm just going to say that these are kids as well, because if they're juvenile, they're minors, they're underage, that were alleged victims. Yeah, I'm going to probably say that this myth debunking has been debunked if you just go back about 3 years. Now, I want to show you guys this example, okay? Now, this is Huffington Post, right? We all know about their style of reporting. The undead myth of sex trafficking at the Super Bowl. This was reported last year. So this is when the rhetoric actually started. Last year. It's just ramping up this year for whatever reason. I have always had a suspicion that they're going to start to spray this type of rhetoric around sex trafficking, and I think that this is the start. So this started last year. So they're talking about whipping up panic about the sex trafficking Super Bowl myth and all these things. Now, this was last year. Now, let's go back to Huffington Post in 2013, where it says, Super Bowl is the single largest human trafficking incident in U.S. history. Attorney General. I'm sorry, it doesn't say history. Super Bowl, let me repeat that. Super Bowl is the single largest human trafficking incident in the United States, says the Attorney General. This was back in 2013. So they obviously go into this this article here detailing how it is actually, according to Forbes, 10,000 prostitutes were being brought to Miami for Super Bowl in 2010. 133 underage arrests for prostitution were made in Dallas in the 2011 Super Bowl. This was reported by Huffington Post themselves. So again, I'm just going to ask, how the hell is all of this a myth? When did this become a myth? Because I'm pretty sure the same sources that are reporting that it's a myth now weren't singing the same tune a couple years ago, almost a decade ago. Just pay attention to what's happening. Pay attention to these headlines and don't turn away from them, because this is what I suspect they're going to try to do, is to twist this sort of true information into misinformation. This is misinformation to say that Super Bowl sex trafficking influx is a myth. That is absolutely false. So I also want to leave you guys with this. If human trafficking is an underground industry, how is it that these media outlets can claim that, because, I saw once that, because Polaris didn't report more calls, that was one of their factors of reporting that, then it's a myth. It's not actually happening over and over again. Or, it's actually not much more than what's being reported every day, is another claim, that law enforcement are getting the same calls for human trafficking as they do on a regular day. How can you quantify an underground industry that happens in discretion? How can you quantify that and call it a myth if you truly don't know what's going on behind closed doors? This is a dark industry. And of course, these traffickers are not going to want to let you know what's going on. It's indiscreet. So I'll leave you guys with that. I just thought I'd bring that up to your attention. Please let me know in the comments below your thoughts. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thank you for watching this video. Thank you for supporting the channel. Please be sure to like, share, subscribe, and I will catch you guys in the next episode.